What's up, everyone? You're listening to the Grepcast from TSP LLC, bringing you a weekly look into the world of technology and technology-adjacent ephemera. My name is Adam Fisk, and today we're joined by Kelly Ford.
Hello.
And Michael O.
Hello.
Okay, so we are going to be back in our happier flow of things this week. We'll at least try that spin as much as we can. No doom and gloom this week. That said,
sure?
None whatsoever.
That said, we are starting out with an article that came through motherboard.com via Vice, written by Samantha Cole, talking about how it's getting real easy to make fake videos of people's faces. This is a really scary article, but it is intriguing if we think about it from maybe how it could be used for museums. But this article goes to describe how researchers at Samsung AI Center in Moscow have figured out a way to make what they call living portraits. So essentially they can make video of people where there is only a single photo used for reference. So in this case, the scary one to me is seeing the Mona Lisa talk and gesticulate. I did not like it. It was bad and made me scared.
Our good old friend Uncanny Valley is back.
It is back with a vengeance. It is trying to make us remember that it never left. But yeah, they're calling this one-shot learning. They essentially have trained this algorithm by just crawling through more than 7,000 images from celebrities from YouTube videos to kind of learn and focus on what they're calling landmark features, which are eyes, mouth shapes, and length and shape of the nose bridge. And then from there, they can make that picture talk. And I hate it.
Well, from a technology standpoint, it's pretty incredible. Like, amazing to see how far AI technology has gone, from, I went to school in university in the 90s when AI, its first kind of, birth, at the media lab at MIT, they were talking about how it was going to change the world, and none of it really kind of happened, and people were like, AI is, it's just oversold. But this sort of wave of AI and deep learning that's happening now, it's pretty incredible to see this. I mean, and to imagine that it can be done off of one reference image versus like hundreds, which is kind of what last week's technology was.
Right.
I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, I like the idea that you mentioned, Adam, about being used in museums, because you think about it now, it's kind of like going into, what is it, Disney World's the Hall of Presidents? Yeah, so you've already kind of got it. So now this is just another realm for that, which is pretty cool.
I think there's 4 examples on this motherboard article, 2 which there was never any video component. Obviously, the Mona Lisa did not get any video. And then Dostoevsky photography obviously existed, but no movies. But even looking at the images using Dali and Marilyn Monroe, they're believable. I can see it. Like, it's a little weird.
Marilyn less so.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you knew her personally, of course.
Of course.
Kelly, so.
I think the ones where there were just images versus video seemed slightly more realistic to me.
Well, but I mean, I guess this isn't where it stops, right?
Of course not.
Although I do have to say, it's a bit strange that, this technology, which I'm going a little negative, just warning the listeners, could be used for deep fakes, fake videos of politicians and all that kind of, and celebrities, not in good ways, came out of the Samsung research facility in Moscow. Coincidence.
Red Dawn,
Interesting.
Wolverine.
Yeah.
I always knew the Russians were coming. I was trained.
Yeah, there is so much room for evil in this case.
Oh, yeah.
I'm trying to use that Simpsons, put on the VR helmet, and then you can hang out with Genghis Khan, but I don't think that one is going to be as prevalent in the beginning of this technology. It will definitely be more videos of politicians saying things that they didn't say, but like various AIs have reconstructed their voices and now faces.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, in last September, 3 lawmakers sent, I think Adam Schiff was one of them as well. They asked the Director of National Intelligence to issue a warning about these because of the threat that these can be used against us by hostile nations. So, I mean, we're talking about people who are still duped by, Photoshop.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to feed into a lot of incredibly negative stuff, but maybe, like you said, Adam, let's talk about the positives. I mean, there are, could you take the writings of Abraham Lincoln and photos of him and put it into some sort of AI learning, system now and actually kind of create a virtual Lincoln, right? Somebody that can sound and speak like he would have spoken, answer questions, look like him. I mean, there are some really interesting kind of, museum-like historical kind of uses for it. I just hope that those are what people use it for.
Yeah, if we get into a area where for education, or even in this article, the researchers, quote, recognize the applications for realistic face avatars in video conferencing, gaming, and special effects. So there's definitely some options. If we get into that virtual intelligence style where, you can go up and talk to a Lincoln and you can ask him questions and there's a very set number of responses or response styles. Hey, that's interesting. That's cool. Get people go to museums again and learn stuff. But we will definitely be reporting on the downsides.
And on the downside.
Yeah, it's just like already things that are noted as fake, such as, recent example, the doctored video of Nancy Pelosi. We already know that's fake, and they're still, going back to our friend Facebook. They know it's not real and still refuse to take it down. So it's kind of like this idea of moderation and regulation. Now we've got these things out here that are super fake, faker than fake. What is it? The deep fake. Faker than deep fake, which I had to look up.
And the Pelosi video, I mean, I haven't watched it, and I'm sure our listeners, if they wanted to watch it, they probably already have. But so what I've heard is that it's slowed down and edited, right? So it's cut. So it's sort of technically it's still real, but like just barely. Is that correct, or is it like, or have they actually basically, is it fake in the sense of they've actually kind of recreated stuff?
It's doctored.
Yeah.
It's
right.
Yeah, it is. There is an intentional hand on there. It was real footage. It's the same way that I think people have been doing forever for more of a comedic effect, but now being used for more misinformation, which is the real terror of this deeper than deep fake technology where, sure, there are so many good things that could happen out of it, so many interesting ideas. I've seen more and more images of fake people that look real compiled by AI. And that stuff is really, really interesting. And all you need is one bad thought to really use it against everyone else.
Well, I mean, it goes back to that constant theme of ours, which is technology in itself doesn't contain the ethical content. It's sort of the it's how you choose to use it. So this is really interesting in the sense that there's a lot of good, a lot of negative. Let's see where this goes. Hopefully there is some knowledge, and those of us, those that are listening to Grebcast and those that kind of can see this stuff, at least will have a discerning mind about it and sort of be able to say, is this video real or not? But the scary thing is, what about the rest of the world?
Right. That was one of the things that a complimentary Vice article had mentioned. It's just like, I mean, this was an article that was way more not cautionary. They were just laying it out and being like, you know what, guys, we're effed. This is just what this is. Will regulation or moderation save us? No. Media literacy will. And if we're banking on the general public to have that, well, then you know what, we're effed. So sorry, I didn't go positive there at all. But I mean, it's always that double-edged sword with technology. There's good, there's bad, there's Yeah. So hopefully we can help with the media literacy.
Yeah.
I will say that there are a set of these types of technologies that are coming out, and they're talking about how AI is transforming the ability to do this stuff. But one of the ones that I read recently was that at MIT's kind of computer science division, they were sort of talking about taking voices and converting them into pictures, and it was based on AI. So based on the voice of a person, it would try to figure out what the person looked like using reference imagery only, so nothing that other than the voice. And that was one where I was like, no, like you do not need to go there. Like there is no real benefit for that, because as far as I can tell, that's basically like, I mean, that's rife with this whole sort of bias, what you hear and what people want to hear, and like what it generates is going to be, yeah, I mean, that's trash. So there are places that the technology shouldn't go, as far as I'm concerned.
Speaking of going places where technology shouldn't go, we now have a city held hostage, which didn't think that one was going to happen. I guess it was more of a matter of time. But the city of Baltimore is the next, let's call them an organization that has been held hostage by ransomware. Mike, it happened again, and now it is citywide.
Yeah, and it's really, I mean, Baltimore is trying to do the right thing, which is not to sort of pay the ransomware hackers. I think that, the number was in sort of six figures to get their data back, and they're sort of saying, well, we're going to try to do this analog for a little bit while we kind of recreate our systems. And it was also in the news that Google had sort of disabled a bunch of Gmail accounts that the city of Baltimore had set up, trying to kind of get around all of the disruption, unfortunately. But it seems like it's going to be going on for a while. I mean, the coverage of this is like, they're going to be like this for weeks, and it's going to slow down things like mortgages and things where, a lot of these systems that were digital and people were able to look up stuff online, well, they're going to have to go pencil and paper, and while they kind of rebuild a bunch of systems. So it's kind of interesting to sort of see how the city reacts to this, because it's very different, looking at it, how private enterprise reacts to ransomware, because they have so much more resources to sort of tackle this stuff. So I was sort of comparing this, when we were talking about kind of the show notes here, to the WannaCry, which happened a couple years ago, and the Maersk shipping company, getting completely flattened by that. They said over 50,000 infected computers and thousands of applications and servers, but they were back up and running in 10 days. Whereas, unfortunately, the city of Baltimore looks like this is going to be an ongoing story.
Yeah, this is, I think, now going on 3 weeks. Original article is coming from the New York Times. That was published on the 22nd of May. And it starts by saying more than 2 weeks ago. So this is going to be a long time going. In this article, it discusses and calls out that it took down not only voicemail, but email, parking fine databases, a system used to pay water bills, property taxes, and vehicle citations. So it is very much, I think they're calling themselves Robin Hood, like taking down the systems that the evil tax man wants to use. But again, like to your point, Mike, in this article it says more than 1,500 home sales are being delayed because, hey, this all needs to go through city databases, and these databases are either totally offline so that any of the current ransomware issues don't spread to them, or have been totally locked up.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting looking at these types of events in retrospect. So there's a great Wired article that talked about WannaCry, which is now a few years ago. So they've really had a lot of time to sort of analyze the response, and there's a great detailed article about Maersk. I mean, while they were able to bring their system up in 10 days, they have this great story about the fact that in any modern large corporation, all of these systems are so interconnected. They basically were going to lose their entire Active Directory sort of user setup, and all the policies and everything that are set up as part of kind of Windows Active Directory. except there was this one office in Ghana that the power went off previous to WannaCry hitting it, so they had like this one little crystal of data that was still intact out of 200 Active Directory servers all over the world. And you know, there's this great story about bringing this hard drive, you know, from Africa
like ferried.
into the UK. But, you know, I think it'll be very interesting to see what happened in Baltimore. I mean, I feel really bad for the public officials, the IT, you know, sort of section of the city. I mean, clearly they're probably not as well resourced as a lot of private companies. And from a cybersecurity standpoint, doesn't look like they had a lot of the protections that you really needed to keep this from going nuts all over to all these different services. So it'd be very interesting to see what the kind of the debrief sort of brings up on this one in a few months.
And this is not even the first. They had mentioned that Greenville, North Carolina was attacked, or was reported as attacked on April 10th. So there's no telling how many other cities are going through this, and that they predict that lots have not reported out on this. So it's kind of like that mystery meat of how many are there. And then of the ones who did report, 17% of these organizations did pay. So, and I thought it was interesting too. Did you read the ransom notes?
Yeah, they're very good. They're very funny to me.
Quote, "We won't talk more. All we know is money."
Yeah.
And then apparently for 3 Bitcoins, which is equivalent to, as of the article writing, because it fluctuates so wildly, it was $24,000 for each system to come back online, or for the low price of 13 Bitcoins, which was 102,000, they could get all their systems back. But do you trust a Robin Hood?
That's the thing. Like, there's no guarantee in any of these situations.
Oh, no.
If you were a larger organization, a municipality, or even just a person, if you're hit with a ransomware, if you pay, there's no saying you'll actually get decrypted. Like, you're going at the mercy of someone who is holding you ransom, which I don't know how much faith and trust you can place into that person.
But also, did you see their privacy statement?
Exactly. So maybe they value your privacy in that statement. It, quote, "I want to mention that your privacy is important to us. All of your records, including IP addresses and encryption keys, will be wiped out after your payment." Which is far more than Twitter, Facebook. Like, geez, come on.
I mean, I'm just waiting for the GDPR notice to come up on the hacker's ransom note. Like, yes, we will treat your, information with the utmost privacy and respect.
Yep.
Thank you for paying your 13 Bitcoins.
Yeah,
that's just wild. Yeah.
Starting in 2013, it's only going up from here. We'll see who's next. This has been reported to the FBI. There are reports that this actually has now pointed back to the NSA. So the story is going to get weirder and weirder as time goes on. So to your point, Mike, we'll see what that debrief is in 3 months. And there have been calls for the NSA to help pay for the restitution costs of the city of Baltimore.
Good luck on that.
Yeah.
So nothing's going to happen. Baltimore is going to just keep on, I guess, not paying for water bills. I'll check in with my brother who lives in Baltimore and see how he's doing.
One of my favorite things
roving
on
reporter.
This, somebody was like, "This would be a great season for a reboot of The Wire."
Yeah. What are they going to do?
They've tackled it all, especially with government, and it's like, this is just chef's kiss.
If you are in Baltimore and you're dealing with this, maybe you want to go on a vacation. So, do we have a deal for you? All you have to do is give away your DNA makeup. So, this coming from Vox, an article written by Gabby Duvall. Airbnb is now partnering with 23andMe to send you on your, quote, heritage vacation. So if you've ever really wanted to go to, I guess, Europe, you're good to go.
Yeah. I mean, now we get to see how they're using the data that we know they were selling. Here you go.
Yeah,
here's a nice tangible
partnering
example.
up with Airbnb. Yeah. Oh, it's such a feel good type of thing. Don't you want to walk in the footsteps of your ancestors, in the places that they came from, plus or minus 2 or 3 thousand
Right.
miles.
Right.
Right. I mean, it's sort of, it's kind of crazy. That they actually sort of thought that this was the best way to sort of monetize the data that they're getting. Well, I guess it's better than harvesting it for genetic
Anything
information.
else.
I mean,
Yeah, so
but
it's positive.
Airbnb, they do report that they've seen a 500% uptick in searches for heritage travel. So people were doing this anyway so before DNA tests really
Right.
became prevalent on the market, tons of people, like I used to work in the travel industry way back when, and we had a ton of people who always wanted to go, and you would talk to them and they said, oh yeah, my ancestors are, of course it's always from Ireland if you're here in Boston, but not always, but traditionally. So yeah, I think I'm the one who posted this, and my original reaction was LOL, what? But then I really don't hate this idea because I think it does tap into that wanting to understand your ancestors, wanting to kind of walk in their shoes without needing a deep fake video of them. Though maybe that will happen, Maybe that's coming to Ancestry and 23andMe, where you can upload a photo of your ancestor and then they just start
Hey, there you
talking
go.
to you.
And they'll
They
talk
just
to you.
talk to you.
You guys just come and find me. I've got ideas.
Yeah.
You got
and I'm gonna
ideas,
die.
and then you'll put on the VR helmet,
Yeah.
and just be able to, just take their journey.
Yeah. Mine wouldn't get
Yeah,
me much
with-
further than the South, though. All my trips are still just Arkansas and Mississippi.
I think a couple episodes ago when we were talking about who funds the study.
Yeah.
A study that they cite in this is back in April, it had 8,000 participants from 8 countries. They found more than 50% of Americans have traveled to at least one country of their ancestry, as have 89% of Indian people and 69% of French people, which is really interesting. That study was commissioned by Airbnb, so
What?
it's a little self-serving.
Yeah.
50% of Americans have gone to the country of their ancestors, but what
At
percentage
least
of
one.
Americans what percentage of Americans actually have passports? I mean, it's
Well, that's 50% of the respondents.
Right.
well, right. Oh, okay.
So
Of
if
the
if
sample
they're
size
on
of
Airbnb,
Airbnb.
they're
Yeah.
travelers. Like
yeah, it's true.
my parents don't have a passport. Actually, they only got a
So
passport to go to Canada. So
And they probably weren't called up by Airbnb on this survey.
That said, in this case, there was an additional report that this form of tourism, so genealogical ancestry trips, has grown rapidly and is increasingly popular, quote, as Western societies age. So all of our parents who are saying, you know what, I really want to go and check out the Wales now or wherever, it's becoming more and more popular. So this is just the new bubble that is going to be forming. Companies that are based around only DNA-based tourism. So in this case, it actually trends in 2017. Ancestry DNA, which I presume is a weird knockoff of Ancestry.com, and Go Ahead Tours have been providing these tours. So they're also doing cruises. So there's nothing more than people like than
Oh, God.
a genealogical ancestry cruise. You can start doing your grids.
Do your like giant ship, travels to whatever country you're from, and then deposits large amounts of trash in the country that you're from, and then leaves. I mean, there's nothing more kind of poetic about
what I call
today's
family.
society than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
and you still get your American style breakfast. Because
go.
that's
Yes.
one
Get
thing
that
that
cantaloupe
American
and a
tourists
bagel.
love. They need their cereal in the morning. That's a fact. But it's interesting too. It's not just home rentals, it's also tours. And so there's even if you're not able to get out of the country, say if you're hanging out, I think the example they gave was like San Francisco, you know, you can go down to Chinatown and you can learn how to make noodles or something, you know, so it's kind of really tapping into, okay, we're not just going to go abroad with the heritage travel. You can step outside your door, go down the block and experience your heritage.
Right. Experiences are everything.
Oh, God.
And also possibly turn in your, you know, family criminals, you know.
All right. I mean, the part about this article, which I really loved, was a small little snippet talking about data privacy, where the author of the article basically said that she couldn't actually get her genetic information deleted from these services. Right, because that's the other way to go, is to say, all right, this has gone too far. I want my genetic information deleted at my request because it's mine. And basically, she wasn't allowed to do it because it's against federal law. And those federal laws are oriented around the regulation of medical companies and the deletion and you know, basically the HIPAA and all these sort of data regulations around medical information. So she says, quote, deleting my genetic information at my request is against federal law. 23andMe and any other company that uses facilities meeting federal standards for clinical laboratories can't just toss out your data.
Even with GDPR, where you can actually go invisible, you can go dark.
Yeah, but
GDPR,
this is America,
right.
not
Okay.
GDPR is the land of, well,
Yeah.
not the free apparently, but you know,
Well, I just
fewer guns.
Yeah, I always assume that if it's online, it lives forever.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
kind of
100%.
my-
Oh yeah.
So if you're
Of
kind
course.
of at the point where you're like, I've done this DNA thing and I can actually access it online, then well done. No, of course you can't. I mean, that shouldn't be the way, but kind of the disclaimer of everything is it lives on forever.
Well, the federal government agrees with you, Kelly. If your
Yeah.
genetic information is in one of these, it's there, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
So you might as well just take a trip with the information
what?
that
I
you've
will.
learned.
Well, in this case, I am sorry that unless you are a white male, in this, tests are notably less precise if
Well,
your
yes.
ancestors are not from Europe. It is also possible from this in the last line, which is very good. Quote, it's also possible they'll end up suggesting you to go to countries that have nothing to do with your heritage after they collect your genetic data, of course.
Yeah, because it's not, I mean, as mentioned before, a lot of this data, it's just the closer you are to the ancestry, so however many generations back, the more accurate it is. But once you start thinking about, you know, we all come from Africa, or we all came through the Bering Strait, or, you know, through this Central America, whatever. It's just not as accurate for most of us because they're basing it on populations that are densely populated, and there is. So I'm trying not to use like the blood thing because I know that's tricky, but populations that have lived in a certain area for a very long time, and so they're pretty uniform, like
Right.
not a monolithic culture, but kind of. And because
It's
especially
someone
in
that leaves
America,
fingerprints.
how mixed we all are in terms of our
Right.
backgrounds, it's kind of a crapshoot as to whether or not it's real. So, yeah.
So you're telling me that an online service that's telling me to go to a trip to, you know, love or kind of follow in the footsteps of my ancestors, you know, in order to basically make money is probably making up some data? That's amazing.
They're not making up the data. I mean, the DNA company is, they're doing
DNA company.
They're doing the best job they can. But the way I see it is the more that people are aware of the multiculturalism in our own genes, the better they'll be human citizens, hopefully. Because as you know, I have found that people who travel are, you know, more liberal, more progressive, more ethical, more moral. That doesn't always count. You know, you got the people with the private jets, but in general, when you're traveling, you don't really find the worst of humanity. You kind of find the best of humanity.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm kind of like, I don't hate this idea. And it could be just I come from a travel background, so travel just makes me really happy.
Yeah, and I'll say, like, this, looking on the bright side, everything's busted forever already.
Well, yeah.
But if you get to, like,
Anthropocene.
hey, take a vacation, go somewhere, like,
Learn
eat your
about
Cheerios
people.
in the morning, but you know what?
Yeah.
Like, eat lunch at someplace weird and try something new, experience cultures outside of yourself. I think we found that once you see more of the world, you are a little bit more cool with what's going on, so I can't fault Airbnb for wanting to, make a buck, but at least allow people to see other cultures, other cities, other worlds. Even if it's like, you know what, I'm going to go to Oregon instead of hanging out in Boston. I can't get mad at that.
And then you're supporting those local economies.
Exactly.
Think about it. So in this way,
Yeah.
too, I think, too, this is a product that they're responding to actual customer demand as opposed to, hey, we think that people want this because we want them to want this so that we can get some VC money.
Yeah. We're not making scooters for the sake of making scooters. We're actually doing things that people actually want. I guess that's where partnerships actually come out of. But that is
So
the
good
time.
work, Airbnb.
Yeah,
Good work.
Airbnb, you did a good one this time. Let's talk about not murdering property costs in
Yeah,
cities. But
there's that.
that's a
Different
topic for
discussion.
another week. On that is the time that we have this week on the Grebcast. If you want to see what we're up to, read some of the stuff we're saying, feel free to check out our sites. We got tsp.me and tsp.space, and you can always see us over on Instagram at tspllc. But in terms of plugs this week, what do you got, Kelly?
Well, I might as well just go ahead and plug The Wire if you haven't watched it, all the seasons. Like season 2, you know, it's not the best. Sophomore seasons are hard, but, you know, give it a try. It's set in Baltimore, and it is just incredible. Have you guys seen it?
Not
Oh,
every.
come
No,
on.
I haven't binged.
I'm gonna
all
start
of the-
Deadwood. Come on.
I know. You guys never watch what I tell you to watch. One day.
I know. Well, it's Westworld for me. That's my current binge, and Black Mirror. So,
Right.
plug for me is this weird kind of site / well, they call it a free virtual co-working service called FocusMate that pairs you with a complete stranger for 50 minutes of silent mutual labor over a webcam. It's just a funny concept, so the link will be in the show notes.
That's creepy.
I think it's a creepy productivity enhancer, which I don't know that I'm necessarily going to try, but it's an interesting concept.
It was a journey of an article, and I can't go wrong with that. Whether or not I will actually do it, the answer is I won't. So
Yeah.
Mike, please do this and report back next week.
Okay.
Do
maybe,
it for the listeners.
Maybe.
yeah, do it for the listeners.
I'll do it for the listeners.
But until we hear that report back from Mike on how much he loved getting stared at, stay cool.
Bye.
All right. See ya.